RWBY Volume 4 is the counterproductively titled first volume of RWBY.
And now, we can really start to tell this big story out in this big world.
Which is great, because honestly, it feels like we've been waiting for that for years.
We've been excited about for several years now.
And interestingly, luckily, perplexingly, this works as the introduction to a longer show. And it functions as a piece of storytelling on its own. The question, what do the main characters do, actually has an answer. They're walking. They're walking to a place. And there are even subthreads revolving around different characters. It's like they saw this and thought, wow, this will revolutionize storytelling. And they did it 5 times.
One of the scariest things for us with Volume 4 was the fact that our girls are separated. We essentially have 4 separate storylines that we have to jump back and forth between, Game of Thrones style.
Fuck you to those people.
And I mean, they had better. It took them 4 years to figure it out. I mean, it's brilliant. They show us things on screen that are relevant to the goals the dialogue establishes.
Well, we are on our way to Mistral.
And I cannot fucking believe that I'm talking about RWBY right now. I mean, I know I've made compelling arguments in the past that every volume goes out of its way to retcon the previous one out of existence.
Colossal failure.
And this is no exception, but they actually have something here. They made a full-on movie. They introduced monsters and antagonists and protagonists, most of which have some sort of arc, some lore that's questionable, intrigue, action, a waifu, a hot guy who didn't make me question my sexuality even a little.
We're all rensexuals now.
And I mean, some of those character arcs I mentioned are even really compelling. Yang is dealing with real shit, like depression and PTSD. And a neck that turns all the way around. But most importantly, the depression, which was handled a lot better than I was expecting it to. Both on the writing end...
Carrie.
Hello.
I gotta give credit where credit's due, man.
To who?
To you.
Oh.
And the acting end.
Yang losing her arm, would you put that into your character when you're voicing her?
Watching this show over and over again for the sake of writing this review tends to illuminate a lot of plot holes. But in this case, a single line said in passing right at the end of episode 10 makes Yang's PTSD arc a lot better.
Shion, it's weeks away from here.
Meaning that at some point between episodes 2 and 6, multiple weeks passed. And if you can remember 6 episodes back, which you probably can't because if that part of your brain functioned, you would have probably dropped RWBY years ago. But you'd remember some lines that don't make a lot of sense, because Beacon goes from...
with no end in sight. Try as they might, the local huntsmen and huntresses can't seem to get a hold of the situation at Beacon Academy.
To...
reinforce our numbers at Beacon.
To...
Professor Goodwitch is working round the clock to restore Beacon to its former glory.
And we never even see it in that time frame. I mean, seriously, why have anything at all? What was the point of destroying Beacon if Beacon's destruction wasn't gonna impact the story for the entire time that Beacon was destroyed? I mean, they go out of their way to write a scene to teach us that caring about things the characters say is pointless, because any given piece of exposition won't come up again until it's made obsolete. Shit, this is me genuinely trying to explain the positive aspect of the series. From that combination of lines, we're supposed to infer that multiple weeks passed between episodes 3 and 4.
We've been at this for weeks. I get it.
Shut the fuck up, Yang. Seriously, that line implies that multiple weeks passed between episode 4.
Let's get started.
And 6. Which would be way more stupid. So let's just pretend that she never said that, okay? Are you with me? Alright, are there better ways to convey this information? Of course. I mean, any way that didn't make us think, wow, that was lame, for like an hour and a half before revealing in the most roundabout way possible that one of the multitudes of plot holes introduced in Volume 4 wasn't actually a plot hole after all.
It's weeks away from here.
They could have made it much more clear that a lot of time was passing during episode 3 itself. I mean, don't shoot it like it's one afternoon of Yang doing chores, followed by the next episode taking place later that same night. Yang's section of episode 3 is cut next to a fight that's taking place in real time, So it's not clear that when they cut from the end of that episode at night to the beginning of the next episode, which is also at night, that a lot of time has passed. Because seeing someone overcome crippling depression in a couple hours would be really fucking stupid. Plus, this kind of thing is par for the course for them. Back in Volume 2, 4 months passed between episodes 4 and 5, and I'm pretty sure I was the only person that ever noticed. So, they have no idea what time is, but I'm building up to something positive, I swear. Yang's arc was written by Carrie.
I really actively try to make an effort to be a better storyteller this year. I still have a long way to go.
A man who doesn't know what a scared face looks like.
Oh, it's sad, Yang. What's happening?
However, he did have a very clear vision of what the scene after that would be.
There are so many little subtle things about her body language, about her performance, about what she says and what she doesn't say. It was super apparent to me that you could see every Yang scene so vividly in your head.
It's that moment when your teachers feel really awkward that they don't get your dad's sense of humor.
Well, I guess you lost some brain cells along with that arm.
I mean, when all of the adults in the room, with the exception of your horrible father, start to respect you because of your life experience.
Miss Shaola Yang.
And yeah, Tai is a lousy parent. And not only for the reasons I discussed in Volume 2. I mean, think about this.
Crow wearing a skirt. Then Oz tells everyone it's time to work on our landing strategy.
He's joking about tricking Crow into wearing a skirt, which, I mean, is a good prank. But then the landing strategy? Like, oh, haha, funny. But like, he's aware that his daughter wears a skirt, right?
It's a combat skirt. Yeah.
You would think the nostalgia of that hilarious memory would be a little diminished by the understanding that whatever made it so funny that Crow was practicing landing strategies in a skirt would also apply to his daughter. But then he's really patronizing to Yang unnecessarily?
Adult or not, you still got a long way to go before you're ready for the real world.
Yeah, you're not ready for the real world. Now go back to school for 3 more years and do your job, which is literally to fight monsters until you die. Just like my wife. No, my other wife. Not your mom. She left me to go murder people in the same line of work as you.
As much as Tai wants to hold on to his baby daughter, that's not what she is anymore.
But the great thing about this arc is how Yang has become accustomed to feeling sorry for herself.
I'm not feeling too great right now.
I know from experience that it's very easy to wallow in failure, and that being handed an easy solution after you've already failed can quite literally feel like adding insult to injury. And when you're beaten down like that, refusing to accept help can feel like the only victory you'll ever have a chance at. So you can really easily feel compelled to cling to it, even though that's really fucking stupid.
This is normal now.
And you just need to be told off.
Whenever you're ready to stop moping and get back out there, I'll be there for you.
And subsequently not given a chance to justify it to yourself.
Fear is like any other emotion.
Telling a depressed person to just get over it or be happy is a great way to get looks of disgust. But by more subtly nudging them towards a more fleeting emotional state, like anger, or sadness, or even fear, could actually help them restart their ability to feel anything other than hopelessness. And potentially get them back out into the real world. Even though the world's remnant is a shitty place, and Yang has chosen to live her life in a way that will inevitably end in her death to a swarm of monsters. 10 out of 10, guys. Yay. But you know, Tai Yang does actually step up after this scene and keep his word.
Let's get started.
In the token great scene of this volume.
What's your favorite scene to either write or act from Volume 4?
I really like the scene where they're sparring because that was like a realization point for her. And I just like that interaction.
He takes responsibility for both her physical and emotional disabilities.
It won't always save you.
Because from the outset, this seems like, oh, they tripped into the good old...
Everybody has a unique semblance. Yes.
Plot hole again. But from the context of Tai Yang being Yang's father and teacher at Signal...
He's still teaching at Signal.
And not teaching her properly through all her years of schooling there for whatever reason, he finally steps up and teaches her how to utilize her power effectively.
You gotta keep your emotions in check. Keep a level head and think before you act. Your semblance is a great fallback, but you can't let yourself rely on it.
And tries to heal, or, at least contextualize her emotional woes by finally talking to Yang about her fucking mom.
Oh, so now we could talk about her?
You'd think he would have done that after she almost got her sister killed, but you know what you're gonna do. Now, it is a little hokey that she immediately gets it right after this talk.
Maybe you see, there's a way around as well.
But from a thematic, all of her concerns have been addressed and now she's at peace standpoint, it works. You know, but still, she should have been beat down to show how far she has to go, and that being at peace with yourself is like only the first step.
But I think it was really important to us that we didn't have Ty pull any punches with Yang.
But it could have been done better is infinitely better than my usual complaints about RWBY, which is that it literally couldn't have been done worse. Besides, they kind of try to pull that back with Yang's penultimate scene where Tai says as much.
I don't remember saying that you were ready.
And holy shit, that outfit! It's incredible. So ultimately, what I have to say is that they listened to every criticism I made in my other 3 reviews, and RWBY is perfect now. And that's the end of the review. There's a link to my Patreon in the description. And now listen to the outro song for like an hour and 10 minutes. It'll be great. Are they gone? Okay, good. Now, let's play a game called Time to Plot Hole. How it works is that we start at the very first frame of episode 1 and count how long it takes for something to be contradicted. Let's go! That was fast. Fuck. This show is written by humans, ladies and gentlemen. Many people were paid to make this. They didn't even last 30 seconds.
Fuck you shot.
Why do they insist on erasing every established element from continuity with extreme prejudice? Fully armed and armored Grimm climbing out of the primordial ooze? When just 3 episodes ago they said this.
You know, we've established the longer Grimm exists, the more ferocious and feral and
bigger and
grotesque they
spinier
become.
kind of stuff.
I wonder why they even bother. They take time out of their busy schedules to establish something and manage to contradict it before they ever pay it off. So this new volume is intrinsically exciting because it's the starting point. And no, not only because the writers said so themselves,
Start to tell.
but because the title is the next step. And when was the first step? Why, Volume 1, Episode 4. Here are these characters, and now they're relevant. Okay, I mean, it's not just that. They also go out of their way to drop some exposition about each character, even if it's a bit too much.
Good afternoon, sister.
We could have gathered that much from the,
No, she's already drinking in the garden.
You know, you could have shown us that. You didn't need to say it.
You never liked Winter.
Oh, but why would you feel the need to remind this guy of his own opinion?
You seem different.
That's, you really don't get how storytelling works, do you? You can't just tell us a character had an arc before the first scene he was in. Yeah, I mean, sure, he's a cock who's out for Weiss's inheritance, but shouldn't that be clear by the fact that he's introduced with an unresolved chord that starts on the 4th beat of a bar?
Good afternoon, sister.
Or even his creepy Dutch angles? The verbal exposition is just madness. Take this, for instance.
There's more members of Juniper in this team than RWBY.
The first time the main characters are on screen, we're informed that the group used to be on 2 separate groups that got broken up and reshuffled.
But we're helping RWBY with her objective.
We also learn that RWBY has an objective, and these 3 are trying to help her, and like 5 minutes later we get a vague sense of what that objective entails.
Well, we are on our way to Mistral.
We don't learn why until much later on.
He was using you as bait.
But at that point, we also learn that the characters themselves don't know why either.
Look, I wouldn't put it like that. It's complicated.
Which is something that should be implicitly understood by anyone who understands that 4 classically comes after 3. So the question is, did they expect us to forget, or are they hoping we forgot? because we were reminded of a lot of stuff from Volume 3.
I have half the mind to thank the little girl that bested you.
But other things are blatantly contradicted or otherwise don't make any sense.
She took your eye, didn't she?
But why is Cinder's left eye more damaged than her right? That one was directly exposed to the energy blast, while her left eye was slightly shielded by her hair. Or, arguably, the more important plot point of
killed dear Ozpin.
I mean, she says that, and then later questions it like maybe Ozpin isn't dead?
Did you kill Ozpin?
But the problem here goes all the way back to word 1 of the story.
Legends.
Literally, the narration. The introduction to the whole shebang was a conversation between Ozpin and Salem.
There will be no victory in strength.
But perhaps victory is in the simpler things that you've long forgotten. Things that require a smaller, more honest soul.
A smaller, more honest soul. How does it feel? Knowing that all of your time and effort has been for nothing. This is the beginning of the end, Ozpin.
So she knows for damn sure what Ozpin's status is. They were talking after whatever it was that Cinder did to him. I mean, I have no clue why this conversation started with a brief history of fucking history.
But he was born into an unforgiving world.
But it happened, right? The gag is that only the current volume is canon.
It's one of those shows where it's like you don't have to point somebody to the trailer and go, oh yeah, don't watch anything later in the season.
But still, this is the one volume that makes an attempt to be functional on its own. Not that it's successful. So if you take the writers at their word and believe that this is the first volume of RWBY, it kinda works. It's also kinda dumb and kinda shit, but it's a motherfuckload better than if you try to pretend it's some sort of continuation of the first 3 volumes. But, to quote Gray,
oh no! There's this thing called continuity. You keep using that word. I do not think it means what you think it means.
Yes, this thing called continuity, which is supposedly the lifeblood of the serial narrative. Something is established in one episode, and it is safe to assume that the audience will remember it was established when its consequences play out in later episodes. Alright, that was a bad example. Let me try again. Explaining that some unimaginable power is so dangerous that they had to invent the Illuminati just to protect it.
Our group was founded in order to protect both mankind and the Maidens.
And then within an hour and a half of establishing that, wiping the floor with that power. 2 times. But because of continuity, at any point down the line, they can have a character say
a crippling weakness.
And everything is fucking peachy. I mean, you hardly even question it later when said unimaginable power is like, 4 guys, no problem. Oh fuck, a 5th guy. You've done it, guys. You have mastered the art of adding continuity to your story. Retroactively. Can we talk about these characters and what they represent?
She's on her own little team of evil.
Evil! Yes, evil, but they've never been really good at conveying that. Is RWBY some highbrow experiment in debunking media codes? Look at Torchwick. Yeah, he's a thief, but the closest they got to making him unlikable was to make him racist.
Why don't you animals try to pick up the pace?
We like to hint at how he's pretty racist against the Faunus.
While I assume hoping we didn't notice that that trait also applies to Weiss, Ruby, Yang, and Blake. But we never find out what his motivation is until after they've tied him to a group of freedom fighters in a war against an oppressive and inept government. So why is trying to end the abuse of an entire race of people something that the bad guys have to do by accident, instead of something that the good guys are actively trying to do?
Very little gets past him.
Yeah. And stuff that does, sometimes he just maybe chooses to let it get past him, air quotes.
The same sentiment also applies to Cardin. Yeah, he's the antagonist of that arc, but his actions actually make Jean start taking his schooling seriously.
Would you still be willing to help me?
Cinder is trying to fuck up the whole world, but I've never felt like she was very evil. I mean, she's trying to wipe out a group of people that includes Jean. How bad can she really be? And do I have to bring up that they physically can't have ill intent when the bandits and their intent to do harm attracts Grimm?
With attitudes like the ones they have, Grimm tend to be pretty interested in them as well.
These four are in the middle of a Grimm breeding ground and everything's cool. But the good guys are literally the Illuminati, making everything much shittier than it has to be by pulling strings from behind the scenes.
It would cause panic.
But Cinder and her group are written as bad with no room for interpretation. And the worst thing Crow can say about them is that they're trying to change the world?
They'd be able to change the world, and that's exactly what the enemy wants.
How can that possibly be a bad thing?
Like it or not, the people that hired me are going to change the world.
Remnant is a shitty place full of monsters that kill everyone.
The Grimm will destroy everything.
That's the plan.
Meanwhile, Ozpin's group is trying to hide the maidens that could be out there fighting Grimm, and hide the relics that could be used to fight the Grimm, and trick children into doing their bidding.
Please try and be discreet about this matter.
Instead of doing it themselves or sending other adults.
Yes, there were other students at Beacon long before.
Probably because there aren't other adults. Probably because the combat schools trained them in groups of 4.
Trainees are grouped into teams.
For careers in solo mercenary work.
Some will stay together as a team. Some will move on to work alone.
I mean, the main character of the entire show's most touted feature is her naivety.
Let's play some of Ruby's innocence and naivete.
And the people who are actively manipulating her
I trust you, but why couldn't you trust me?
are the good guys. And unless they're trying to pull some ridiculous prestige-style long con by actively lying in their commentary tracks,
We start introducing the idea of this greater evil than Cinder.
only to shock us with the revelation that Salem is the one trying to unfuck everything.
I think a lot of people were expecting Salem to be much more cruel the first time we saw her in episode 1.
Because in a way she's better than that.
And they're just shitty writers that don't understand cause and effect.
Do it again. This time give her a dumb hat.
How is it in any way evil to change a world that thinks the best option is throwing wave after wave of teenagers to their certain death instead of having demigods with unimaginable power equipped with literal relics of the gods defending humanity? Meanwhile, Salem's over here quashing disputes between her cronies.
I'm not particularly fond of failure.
Then I see no reason for your cruelty towards young Cinder.
And looking after her wounded.
You will remain by my side as we continue your treatment.
And training her to fight Grimm.
Did y'all intentionally try to make Salem motherly?
A little bit.
A little bit.
Moral ambiguity.
Yeah, I loved
Evil?
I love Evil, yeah.
Get that shit out of here.
We came to assure you that Brother Taurus and his followers do not represent the will of the White Fang.
What? A splinter cell of your otherwise peaceful organization committed acts of terror at the Vital Festival, and you've arranged a meeting with the president of Furry specifically to condemn those actions?
This is no way to make our message heard.
Not on my watch. I'm a good guy who sat idly by while the bunny girl was getting physically abused. But ignore that because you're associated with evil people, so you're evil too. And then they're like, dumbass bitch doesn't even know we were evil anyway.
You just know they're bad, but you can't quite prove it.
Well, that's just profiling.
I know you got a knife behind your back, dog.
All right, that's straight up racism.
They're based on foxes.
Up to this point, a lot of our White Fang members have been very clearly on one side of the spectrum. Oh yeah, no, she stabs the hell out of Sun.
Yeah.
Why did they bother to make the White Fang sympathetic at every turn, only to outright tell us that every single member is unambiguously evil?
Shall we inform Brother Adam?
How, exactly? And Adam set up a meeting between the leader of the White Fang and this guy.
Adam Taurus has arranged the meeting.
How did he do that? Here's the line from, well, an expositional video explaining how intercontinental communication works.
Prior to the invention of the CCTS, long-range communication was extremely limited. Communication with other parts of the world was restricted to the physical delivery of messages. If one of the 4 towers is taken offline, the entire network fails with it.
Now, if you don't believe in exposition, or the round earth...
We made the ground fly because I wanted to.
What?
Okay. Hang on.
What was that like? Super quick.
Back that thing up.
Let me explain.
Here's a line from literally 30 minutes later.
The loss of the CCT tower continues to prevent contact with the outside world.
But before you get too comfortable, here's the next second of footage.
Talks with Atlas officials regarding repairs have so far.
Yeah, unless Yang changed the channel right before the lady on the TV said, "Not happened yet because of what I just fucking said," something went horribly wrong. in the 9 months leading up to Carrie's birth. But there's this little infographic on screen. How did you know that? How did you know? Physical communication. You know, actually talking with people from Atlas face to face. Hold on, just one more second.
The Vale Council voted this week to continue to ban any air traffic that does not have a direct correlation with evacuation.
What are they doing? What was that line? Or this next one?
Multiple rumors continue to circulate as to who was behind the attacks at the Vital Festival tournament.
Why would there be rumors when the person responsible broadcast her manifesto during the onset of the attack?
While no one knows for sure,
And her assailant, who we now know as Cinder.
People know for sure. Why are they letting the news stir this shit up when the information that could put everyone at ease is known?
We can't cause a panic.
But I'll get to that later. Back to Adam Taurus and the biggest slap in the face the whole volume.
any and all attempts to bring him into custody have been met with brutal force.
So obviously there was a time skip between volumes 3 and 4.
The small time jump that we did between seasons.
I mean, look, Ironwood has a 5 o'clock shadow. That doesn't happen overnight.
Take care of yourself, James.
Plus, at a panel, Miles said this.
How far is the time jump?
I think we said it's about 6 to 8 months.
And at another panel, Miles said something that made Carrie react like this. But the thing Miles ended up saying is just sickening.
We try to keep it as ambiguous as possible. Anytime you bring in like official dates and stuff, that's when plot holes can come up.
Yeah.
And if you just kind of keep it vague, then you don't worry about the plot holes and you just focus on the story and stuff.
And that's when I killed him, Your Honor. Case dismissed.
Guys, there are no official dates. In fact, there's no official data at all. Don't worry about it. We can't have plot holes that way. We're just telling a story with no officially established stuff whatsoever. Listen, it doesn't matter how little you make official if it doesn't work internally.
A vague amount of time that isn't super short, but not unbearably long.
Yeah.
Thanks. Sorry that didn't answer your question at all.
Yeah.
Adam left
amount of time
ago to arrange this meeting that would take place in
amount of time.
But it still took Hazel weeks of walking to get to the train station. Making me think this train station is on the southern tip of Anima, and making me question whether anyone in Remnant has heard of a bike.
In case you didn't get it, the bicycle was just like a little dig.
It took Tyrion weeks to catch up with Ruby and friends.
Approximately 2 weeks worth of walking.
Yeah.
But less than a day to get all the way back to Salem while wounded.
That's something that we also consider in storyboarding. How long does it take for like one character to walk from one bit to the other?
Yang did the entire journey that Ruby did with a motorcycle, must be one hell of a gas tank on that thing, in less than the amount of time it took Weiss to beeline it from Atlas to Mistral in a flying car. But there are no official dates, so it's fine. At the end of Blake's part, they say this.
Adam Taurus is planning to overthrow the leader of the White Fang and stage a full-scale attack on Haven Academy.
As if those are two parts of the same plan. But doesn't he have to be on either continent to do either thing? This no official dates rule means characters can arbitrarily teleport around with no rhyme or reason. The notion that absolving yourself of the responsibility of having to think about how your story will play out will somehow result in less plot holes is unfathomably stupid. So let's take up the mantle of thinking about RWBY, which they have cast aside with such fervor. Why don't we?
Oh, that there's sad Weiss.
That's Weiss's default emotion.
That's true, yeah.
Weiss's arc is actually kinda good.
Yep, there's really no one here that has your back.
Now, Weiss has always had the most going on as a character. She's the one they tried to give the most development to.
I'll be nicer.
The only hitch is that there has to be a catalyst for development.
I think people tend to do that in general, is they change and then they blame something that happens on that change.
But that's old news. We have a fresh new slate now. I mean, it's sort of fresh. The word daddy issues are chiseled into it. Or more like the slate that they wipe clean and write anew each volume was shaped like the word daddy issues. So what's not to love about finally seeing Papa Schnee? He's aggressive and money hungry.
Your dust embargo has already cost me millions.
Self-serving.
So this is about you.
Manipulative.
He's not going to say, I want you to do this thing. He's going to convince you why you want to do this thing.
Yeah.
Racist.
I'm sorry, I tuned out for a second, but sounds like I'm the good guy again.
Slaps twice. All around, just the perfect human being. His foil, James Ironwood, on the other hand, is an unabashedly corrupt politician.
You forget, I hold 2 seats on the council.
So, what? Cinder was right?
They cling to this power in the name of peace.
And he saves remarkably stupid people from getting eaten alive by monsters. Of course you want her alive. She's dumb enough to not blame the head of security for fucking up the security.
It's not that they're necessarily evil or vicious. They're just uninformed and are so comfortable with their life that they don't really worry about stuff outside of their life.
And what was I talking about?
It would make a lot of people happy if you performed at the event.
Oh, right. Jacques manipulating Weiss into singing this awful song. He's such a bastard, isn't he? Manipulating a teenage girl into doing something extremely dangerous that's better left to trained Oh, no, wait, that wasn't Jacques.
Please try and be discreet about this matter.
But he's still an asshole, right? Weiss is not being subtle at all right here. Way to take a stand there. You sure showed him with your soft rebellion. Why would she sing the "I'm not gonna do what you tell me" song when he told her to, you know, sing a song?
Weiss is
kind of giving up in a way. Daddy's
defeated.
Little girl.
Yeah, exactly. Does everything that her dad tells her.
Boy, I sure hope he can't hear. He might have a response of some sort. I mean, take a second to think. He disowned Winter for joining the military. Do you really think that he would let going to Beacon, spending his money, ignoring his calls, singing a fuck you song?
Hey, I wrote you a song! It goes a little something like this! Fuck you!
And ruining his fancy party slide? If you did, congratulations! You're as smart as Weiss.
What? It's foolish not to do as father asks.
Which isn't very smart, because, like, she closes the curtains and moves her bed, only to practice summoning next to open curtains in a spot that wasn't obstructed by where the bed was.
Yeah, take that.
Yeah.
Gotta have space to train, dog.
Yeah.
Even though, you know, Weiss is the only person who actively tried to diffuse an upsetting situation before Grimm showed up.
Get out.
I mean, the only person besides Salem, obviously.
Do you find such malignance necessary?
Even though Grimm kinda did.
Good riddance. Shut up!
Not real Grimm, but this bitch can produce enough rage to attract the real thing. I mean, that's all fine and good, but you don't want to be as smart as Jacques either.
Can you believe there are still people in the world that blame Atlas for what happened to Beacon?
Yeah, because Atlas was in charge of security. It's kinda their fault. And, you know, he left Weiss's weapon right there. After telling her she was being restrained against her will.
You can't just keep me from leaving.
And hitting her. With a really bad reflection. I mean, it's so distracting.
Normally, when we have a reflection in a show, we just go ahead and cheat it. This whole scene was actually the first time we went ahead and used real-world reflections. So we went ahead and did them for real, and I thought they turned out great.
Yeah. Now the exploration process was about, okay, that reflection actually looks too good. We need to knock that down.
Exactly, yeah.
This entire scene is framed pretty stupidly. I mean, think back to the Yang scene with her and her father, and it's all framed to emphasize the emotional distance between them. And this is just framed really awkwardly. Were you trying to give the reaction channels a free corner to put the face cam? And what the fuck is this? Like, they just randomly got both characters in frame. What are these chairs? Why is Jacques lower than Weiss? Isn't he supposed to look menacing and depressive? What are these chairs? Why? Why any of this? And if that wasn't bad enough, why is she practicing summoning in the manor at all? With the door open?
It's like when you're getting close to the high score in a game and your brother or sister just comes in and ruins it.
What purpose does that serve? Especially since it didn't go anywhere.
Master Whitley, yes, of course.
I mean, she gets caught red-handed by the guy who has the most vested interest in keeping her down.
Enjoy your training, however pointless it is.
I just realized what I said, and vested wasn't meant to be a pun, by the way. But nothing comes of it. What was the point of this? To show that Whitley shares the same anti-individualist mentality that Ironwood does? Or at least did?
What could a single huntsman possibly do that an army could not?
Think for themselves? Something that you'd seem to agree with.
Even if it is run by a fool.
I mean, Ironwood was all against huntsmen.
You have two choices. Defend your kingdom and your school, or save yourselves. No one will fault you if you leave.
Or like people in general back in Volume 3. And now he's like, But Winter read the script, Jacques.
I am basing everything on my reports from your daughter.
Why aren't you taking her more seriously?
Winter is one of my best.
And I know Klein took her this way because the script called for it, because she had to hear that exposition.
If she's telling me there's a threat in Mistral, then I'm not going to take that news lightly.
But if there was an entrance to the tunnel that didn't involve passing in front of Jacques' study, thus increasing her odds of getting caught exponentially, why didn't he just take her to that other entrance? Weiss's bags teleport. Now, most of the scenes involving the main characters this volume are pretty dull. I mean, listen to Lindsay, the voice actress for the titular character, try to answer a very simple question.
What's your favorite scene to either write or act from Volume 4?
I mean, I legitimately love this answer.
So the first one we had was Leave Her Alone, and I'm sure you guys know the part. Leave her alone! For anyone who hasn't seen it, I won't spoil it, but that's a really intense moment. And then also, the end of the volume when I get to interact with Yang, and we also have a very big breaking character.
She didn't even fucking try. Those were both blatantly from Volume 3.
I felt like I had to go hug Lindsay at the end of Volume 3. I'm like, I'm sorry, I didn't mean it.
Lindsay is the greatest person who works on this show, which is why it's criminal that they didn't include a cast commentary track like they did for the last 3 volumes. So what, you're telling me I paid for the Blu-ray just for the fucking technical crew commentary?
So I think we should all talk about the main thing in this opening fight scene.
Oh God!
Grass.
The 3D grass.
It was a big blade of grass.
Grass, foliage, and all that kind of stuff. Actual grass.
We were all making jokes about this grass.
This grass always makes me laugh. I'm so happy to have real grass.
Let's talk water.
Let's talk about all the water.
Yeah.
I know we're talking about the grass just because we're talking about that, but just
all these trees.
Yeah, I'm a fan of those trees.
It's better than the trees we had in the past.
We've always had a weird relationship with trees.
No water.
Water and crowd.
You didn't have to deal with the grass on the outside.
No grass. Speaking of grass.
Speak of grass.
And more grass, more problems.
Zero grass.
I want to see the same trees. I love our new smoke effect too. The grass in this scene.
Interesting grass.
But the grass definitely adds to the time it takes to render.
Then we had to put that grass.
We love 3D grass.
Outside of the grass.
A banana in a bowl.
Shut up! Oh my god, I don't care!
RWBY was demoted this volume.
And thus begins the bummers of Volume 4.
Yes.
And the technical crew seems to agree because everything is about Jean.
Yeah, this whole season, I feel like you're really seeing Jean kind of come into his own and step up as a leader.
He gets more emotional moments.
Originally, there was a lot more shots where RWBY was like in the background, and we had to figure out when we want to see RWBY, when we want the scene to just be about Jean and Pyrrha. It's just kind of goofy if you see RWBY like in the background.
Yeah, totally.
Distracting from the
it was weird kind of
weights.
The majority of the character development.
I think one of the notes Carrie gave us was like, make him feel cool.
Yeah, I feel like he's matured more this season almost than any other.
A sign of progress.
Or at least, maybe he was maturing that time, but he's really showing himself to be...
Yeah, leader.
Progress.
The hero moments.
I really like this bit of character development with Jean, where we see him maturing. Where in Chapter 8, he's kind of being sulky and snappy towards Crow. But then when Crow is in danger, he leapt to his defense.
And what does RWBY do?
Me?
Well, I mean, she's the reason they're walking.
We're helping RWBY with her objective.
She's the reason they're being chased.
Tyrion, find the girl that did this to Cinder.
She laughed at Jean. She's literally a MacGuffin and a Deus Ex Machina at the same time. But there's not a whole lot actually wrong with the scenes.
The fact that it was actually a coherent story and not here are 4 things that happen.
Right.
Yeah. Beyond the character's intelligence level being lower than I would expect. Ruby, it's a rock.
The Petroglyphs.
You don't use electricity on a rock. Here's even more wasted, flourishy animation. Monty Ohm would be proud.
The idea is to utilize motion in a way where you don't waste movement.
Ruby, why did you look through the scope if your bullets have that much tracking on them? Now, thankfully for me, this guy...
My question is, how did John obtain Pyrrha's weapons after the fall of Beacon?
I said no bummers. I'm just
It's
kidding.
a cartoon!
It already happened, so it's not a spoiler question.
Nah, it's fine. It's fine. What I have in my head, Crow went and got Ruby. You know, when the whole thing happened, they had to go get her. So there was
pieces of armor,
spare pieces out. Yeah.
You know,
yeah. Okay, we'll just write the Chibi episode where we show the closet and it's got the same outfit every time.
There you go.
That'll
Done.
fix it all.
Chibi will fix it.
Yeah.
I'll probably just off myself.
Cy Crescent painstakingly cataloged all of the animation errors in all of the fight scenes. So I can just spend my time on the far more important task of pointing out things like,
We hit it harder.
Does not convey that you should try knocking its limbs off and then hitting its face.
If we kill the limbs, we'll have a shot to kill the whole thing.
And the fact that they didn't actually knock its limbs off before trying to hit it in the face.
You're the strategist.
One of the most intimidating bosses unless you kill him in one hit.
So what was the point of that? Or that these people happen to be surprisingly nice and generous.
I just wish we could pay you more.
Despite living farther away from the capital of Mistral?
Our people would never survive the long trek to Mistral.
Aren't those people supposed to be scumbags, thieves, and scoundrels?
There's a reason traders and thieves flock to Mistral. There's plenty of places to hide in Mistral.
Or like, how the fuck does the horizon work?
Guys? What?
It's over the horizon.
Like, they're walking down a straight path that's fenced off, thinking they're lost?
We lost.
I mean, maybe Ruby's just dumb, but she can't see the billowing smoke from the village that's that fucking close.
How did you find us out here?
We were on patrol and saw the smoke.
But, as I've already said, a lot of these scenes are inoffensive. Like, we get the general idea that Laya's scared of whatever made this hoof print.
Did you ever talk about having them actually tell the other two about the Knuckle-Avy at all?
The biggest thing that we wanted to try and get across, Ren really wants to repress this stuff.
I think it made for a really interesting arc, too, because there's a little bit of selfishness of him not talking about the Knuckle-Avy.
Yeah. And that Jean is sad that he's single-handedly responsible for Pyrrha's death.
I'm just tired of losing everything.
And that Nora is just generally kind of cool. It all sort of works, except for 2 really big problems. One is Crow, who is relevant in episode 4, the end of 6.
With the writing and direction point, was it more of a meeting to end episodes is cliffhangers?
I don't think every episode ended on
It was every episode.
I think the cliffs were different heights is really what it comes down to.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
I think that's just how we prefer to do episodic content. It's something a little bit at the end to keep you interested to come back. Yeah, I mean, just, you know, it's nice to set up the episode after, I think.
7 and 8. In episode 4, he mostly talks to Raven about the exposition, and yeah, it's a little dry.
I told you Beacon would fall, and it did.
Professor Goodwitch is working round the clock to restore Beacon to its former glory.
The hardest scenes were the dialogue scenes because you can stare at imperfections.
I mean, it's a fucking cafe scene, but granted, it's reasonably inoffensive.
All the tables were turned.
Episode 6 has an exposition dump as well, which you'd have to do some serious mental gymnastics to consider anything other than a massive contradiction of Lyran's flashback.
The richest members of Mistral were unhappy with how the kingdom was being run. They pooled their resources together to build their own city.
Which would make sense. I mean, moving farther away from the capital means the council gives you less oversight.
Many thought it would be the future. I know my parents did.
But there are problems. So, Oniyuri, demonic lesbians, is less than a day's walk from Kuroyuri, or black lesbians.
It's great because the fans look up that stuff.
they do.
And
Yes, we do.
it's a blessing and a curse.
So how is that much distance going to make a difference?
Discontinue operation. We have to go back. This is your last chance.
Places like Kuchinashi start to get a little farther out of sight.
And that one specific Grim,
The Grim. Not just anyone.
this one, attacked it before they were done building it. Now listen to this commentary clip.
All right, it's time to say what we're all thinking.
Yeah.
Hey, Hanzo.
He actually wasn't what you might be thinking of the reference. He wasn't actually in my mind, but he kind of just turned out that way.
In the script, it literally describes Ren's dad as a handsome Hanzo-looking motherfucker.
Yeah.
The direction for Ren's dad was take Ren himself and just make him older.
No, not that one. I mean this one.
And he's gonna go talk to the mayor about seeing if they can get a huntsman to come in because he thinks something bad's about to happen.
If your attempt to move half a day's walk down the road was foiled by this motherfucker, how do you not have a huntsman on site at all times? I mean, these are Mistral's richest citizens.
The richest members of Mistral.
Right?
It would help, but it doesn't make or break the
Yeah,
episode,
it's like it's
you know?
unnecessary information.
They've got to be able to afford to pay a huntsman if extinction is literally right around the corner. It sure is big of little lie to forgive Nora so completely for being the reason his parents were dead. I mean, the Grim fuck off as soon as they can't sense Nora anymore. This is very clearly her fault.
You see her get scared. It struck me as I was animating it, like, you never see Nora scared. The idea that the only thing that scares Nora is other people getting hurt.
Is that because the last time she was scared, she caused everyone to die? This characterization actually makes a lot of sense, and I like it. And with a semblance like this, how is Ren not the most important fucking person in the whole world?
If you're along with the canon of the story, the Grimm are attracted by panic and fear and stuff like that. So once the calming nature is there, you're basically invisible.
Shouldn't a scared, hungry girl who just got bullied be priority number one to track down and deal with?
If you're ever feeling down about this scene, just remember it's likely those kids died the next day.
Think about it this way. At the airport, we have to take off our shoes because of something one guy did. Infinite swaths of people die to Grimm because of negativity, and yet Remnant has no precautions. The citizens of Remnant are less competent than the TSA. Just let that sink in for a while. But anyway, it's sort of moot to dwell on that now. Then there's a fight. A pretty good fight. Dare I say, a pretty damn good fight? The Tyrion fights this volume are some of the best in the whole show. Both because the choreography is sick as fuck, and the tactics they use are really smart. Mostly. Most of the tactics they use are really smart. But yeah, I'll get there pretty soon. Shooting Nora with the lightning bullet is like a direct response to one of my complaints. Why doesn't she have any way to activate her semblance on her own?
RWBY shooting Nora was actually a moment that kind of evolved through the course of the season. It would be really cool to have RWBY engage it on purpose.
I mean, no one's used friendly fire to charge Yang up yet.
So it's okay when Ty hits his daughter, but Jacques doesn't, and everyone...
The answer's also yes.
But now I actually have hope. Tyrion blocking in a way that allows him to shoot at his opponent is also a response to a complaint I had about Lai's weapon back in Volume 1. Crow punching Tyrion in the face while he's standing still is like a complaint I've had about every single show ever. And this use of this broken rafter here is a possibly unintentional homage to Bloodborne.
And then also taking a little bit of inspiration from Bloodborne.
Because that's the most efficient way to kill the Crow Hunter with a low-level build. And most importantly...
Were there any weapons that you guys created, but after you designed it, you were like, this is really stupid, and I don't see how this is gonna work?
Crow never pulls out his stupid fucking scythe.
A lot of people wondered why he never went into scythe mode. And really what it comes down to is it doesn't seem like it would be fast enough.
Yeah, it's not conducive to fighting somebody like Tyrion.
They figured out that it doesn't work on anything that moves faster than grass.
I know people really want to see him in scythe mode, but we just felt it would feel forced and not make a lot of sense for him.
Artistic integrity.
You are artistic and you have integrity.
So I really do feel like they're listening to me specifically when they do all these smart things. So you're welcome. Now, with all that stuff being said, I do still have some complaints about this fight. Do you remember the fight at the end of Volume 3, Roman versus RWBY, where he talked a bunch of shit?
You want to be a hero? Then play the part
history.
And I said no matter what she ended up taking away from that, it would be consistent with her character. Well, I underestimated their ability to fuck up the seemingly unfuck-upable.
We really are kind of pointing the fact that she's very idealistic and optimistic.
Long story short, Ruby should have been jaded by Torchwick's legitimately unfair demise, or had her belief in her own ideology solidified by good winning over evil despite circumstances. But she doesn't exactly take away either of those lessons. In fact, she just meekly questions her involvement in this conflict.
Me?
As if she forgot everything that happened up to this point.
He's really putting her on the spot with this whole, like, you really don't know what you're doing out here, kid, do you?
Yeah.
And I did notice that almost every hit landed on Crow happened off-screen.
Taking some hits, though, dog.
Yeah.
And that Tyrion is purposefully damaging his own aura here.
All these shots would have completely missed if he put his tail anywhere else. He'd still have aura. He wouldn't have lost it if he wasn't so stupid.
He's not the only one.
They don't use aura like it's a storytelling tool. No one fights as though their skin is impenetrable. I mean, even back in Monty's days. Its only function is to inform the audience that they shouldn't care until the sparkly lights signify that it suddenly matters.
You have a lot of it.
But we've been watching them dodge, duck, dip, dive, and dodge for the entire fight. So there's not even a change in techniques after the stakes get inexplicably raised.
This was a K Shawcross written fight.
In a competently envisioned show, that would mean they adopt a more defensive strategy, but thanks, Ren.
Ren's just like, you don't want this, dog?
Yeah.
Yeah, your teammates are one poke away from death, and you're like, what is this, a shield? Get it the fuck out of here. This is why we never see huntsmen who are, alive. We think it's some big mystery, but the simple truth is that they don't actually understand how to not die.
Find Glinda, Ironwood, Crow. Bring them here right away.
They have no self-preservation instinct, and they don't even work as a team.
You two, go with them. There could be more.
And apparently they don't know how to kill things either, because Ruby aims at Tyrion's tail when his neck is, like, right there. If you don't want to kill the bad guys, you are in the wrong line of work, because nobody even follows this attack up. Stab him! Shoot him! Hit him with a grenade or a hammer, you imbecile! Chase him, you dumb fuck! And at this point, where even the bad guys have plot armor, is where anyone with self-respect would have dropped the series. Which is right on time, because episode 8, oh boy, episode 8 is a doozy. Starts off with Crow explaining something we already knew.
The previous Fall Maiden, Amber, had been attacked.
Oh, so you do remember that scene. You could have fooled me.
You were there. You heard her.
See? I told you. And he explains it twice.
It was like episode 6 of volume 3 all over again.
Congratulations, you now have to have 6-7 characters in a scene, and there's a lot of information to get out all in one go.
Oh, yeah.
But to their credit, one of those times was off screen.
Really? No questions?
But it's still a terrible way to write.
I would say this entire campfire sequence is probably, in my opinion, the most difficult thing to write.
That's your brain trying desperately to get an impulse through your neurons in hopes that you understand that we don't need to hear this shit again. How many words did this drunk fuck have to slur to necessitate the audience repeating every part of the story as a question?
And there are 4 of them?
But then he goes ahead and fucks up exposition from earlier seasons. I shouldn't even be surprised anymore.
Not many people are super religious these days.
What do they think the soul is then?
Aura is the manifestation of our soul.
Aura is a physical, observable phenomenon that is a manifestation of a theological concept, but people aren't religious.
Does religion exist in the world of RWBY?
I think it's safe to say yeah, whether or not we'll talk about it anytime soon.
Dude, Yang's Jewish.
Right. Uh-huh. Yep. No. Yep. Uh-huh.
People have created dozens of gods, but if you believe Ozpin, 2 of them are actually real.
Yeah, but you don't have to believe Ozpin because you have physical relics that prove this story is true.
See the 4 gifts to mankind. Each of them exists in a physical form.
But it's fucking stupid anyway. Just like everything else in RWBY, so that checks out. So the god of light created water and plants and wildlife, and the god of darkness brought drought and fire and famine. And then the god of light was like, How do you bring a lack of food or water somewhere? And the God of Darkness seemed pretty miffed by that question, so he created the Grimm, which exclusively
attack humans and their creations.
So they must have been pretty fucking bored until the God of Light said, bro, your monsters look kind of bored. Maybe we should create the thing they exclusively attack. And thus, humanity was created. But not the Faunus, even though they've been around for just as long as humans, if not a little longer.
Faunus have been around as long as mankind, if not a little longer.
Why did they make World of Remnant? Why? It's full of stuff that they never use and just contradict in the show. It's so fucking stupid. I mean, this particular story was on the books before they started writing Volume 1.
Miles, this is your first contribution to RWBY, essentially.
Yeah, back at 636 when we were still working on RWBY 10 and RWBY.
So there's really no excuse for fucking it up.
What does that have to do with us?
Your life's work directly relates to the Grimm, and you just learned why they exist and where they came from, and you don't know what it has to do with you? But that's not what Crow fucking says.
He built them around the relics to act as a fortress. They would be constantly surrounded by trained warriors.
Which is the single dumbest thing anyone has ever said in any context, for the single, extremely obvious reason that it clearly didn't fucking work. Cinder deliberately launched her attack at the moment when literally the majority of active huntsmen would be at Beacon Academy, and it still went off without a hitch. Every other school was short their best fighters, but they attacked Beacon anyway.
Do you really think they planned out that attack on Beacon overnight?
Oh, you're right, Crow. They didn't plan that attack overnight. It took them 2 whole nights. Because if you'll remember, they only learned that Penny was a robot 2 nights before they used that information as the linchpin of their entire scheme.
We're just going to be making a slight alteration to the plan.
And they got access to the randomizer 2 nights before that.
Their original scheme was completely foiled 2 weeks before go time.
How much time has passed between the end of Volume 2 and the beginning of Volume 3?
Didn't we say like just a couple weeks?
I think it's a couple weeks.
Yeah.
So the assault was coordinated within that time frame, and the actual plan was formed the night before it was executed. Not that Crow knew any of that, but this show is so fucked you'll forgive me for not just assuming these two understand the intricacies of dramatic irony.
Do you really think they planned out that attack on Beacon overnight?
It was like 3 volumes.
So we'd have another great war on our hands, and this time, you'd have to fight.
This one is pretty stupid too. And not just for the obvious reason that Jean is one of only 4 people who are fighting right now. In fact, telling people that there's this one specific evil lady who's trying to kill everyone would unite humanity against a common enemy.
When banded together, unified by a common enemy, they are a noticeable threat.
But the phrase another great war, the Great War was started, the World of Remnant about the Great War. Not that I should trust a World of Remnant about anything, but they did definitively state that the Great War started because of a land dispute.
What began as a riot between the 2 bands of settlers had suddenly become the first battle of the Great War.
Another gaping hole is that Ozpin's predecessor
founded the schools,
aka the King of Vale,
the last king Vale would ever have. Founded the Huntsman Academies
80 years ago.
Nearly 80 years ago, the largest war in recorded history came to an end.
Now, go back to Volume 3 and watch this scene knowing that information.
The things we're telling you go against hundreds of years of human history.
Plus, this means they're keeping the maiden secret for literally no reason. Because if you'll recall the excuse they gave...
religion.
But, people aren't super religious.
Oh, God.
So how would saying, hey guys, by the way, there are these 4 bitches with unimaginable power that can fight Grimm instead of, or at least in addition to, your children, cause any panic at all?
From what we understand.
What do you mean, from what you understand, you fucking rubes? You're the ones who hid them in the first place!
It used to be common knowledge.
Yeah, Common knowledge has been reduced to myth within 80 years, and that didn't cause a panic of any sort.
No one would want to believe us.
It would cause panic.
The entire human race just thinks they've been gaslighted for all of recorded history? And no one felt any negative emotions about that. Is there nobody who is, say, over 80? Nobody who was alive when this was going on documented it or told their kids? Did they just happen to get really lucky and have the one guy with the unique ability to erase minds alive at this time?
The hope was that hiding the relics would keep mankind from using them against itself.
Wait. Up until 80 years ago, no one was worried about humans using the relics against other humans? Oh god, can we change the subject? To anything, really, I don't care. Crow's semblance is to bring bad luck.
My semblance isn't like most.
Just how retarded are you?
I bring misfortune.
And I mean, seriously, look at how bad this luck is.
She's not coming. Die.
This man is dying of poison, and his last thought is about a lousy three-way he had with Tai Yang and some chick who, like, wasn't into it at all.
She's not coming. Die.
Do this with your fingers.
Trying to slip in any little Team Stark history whenever possible.
It's always there, whether I like it or not.
And this is our first time introducing the idea of a passive semblance, too.
Are you sure about that?
With each hit, she gets stronger, and she uses that energy to fight back.
It's still a cool idea, don't get me wrong, and would be fine, except that the misfortune is, like, in front of them the whole time. The Nukulevi is, like, one step ahead of them the whole journey and never decides to turn around until some arbitrary point that the writers deemed climactic enough.
It's almost as if there's a huge amount of negativity in Kuroyuri right now. I wonder what... Oh, no.
But shouldn't it have been attracted to him the whole time? Crow's introduction in episode 4 is him stabbing an unsuspecting Grimm in the back. Shouldn't that be physically impossible? So do Grimm only sense negativity when it's convenient to the plot? Another example of bad luck being one step ahead of them, not behind, would be Tyrion tracking them down in episode 6 before Crow catches up. So well done there as well. The other problem with this arc is why? In big letters. Bigger. Yeah, why didn't they take whatever mode of transportation they used to leave Patch all the way to the city limits of Mistral? And just like that, the whole thing falls apart. They could have taken a boat all the way to there, or at least to a dock near a train station. Instead, they walked for multiple weeks.
Maybe like 2 weeks?
What? You can see that she's connected the dots between cities and is like approximately 2 weeks worth of walking.
Yeah.
Probably multiple months.
Why aren't we in more of a hurry to get to Haven?
Just to have a battle against jump cuts.
The scene is quite often shared between, 3, maybe even 4 animators. So, we really have to, work together and like make sure that our, we're using the same, tools and techniques. We've definitely improved on that this season as well.
That ran anticlimactically 1 combos after an arbitrary amount of ass.
Stop looking!
I mean, they pin its arms, and then the first thing Ren does is cut its arms free. Okay, why didn't he do that immediately?
Oh, everyone said, that's it. Roll credits.
Where's this knife been the whole time? You're telling me nobody thought to kill this thing in however many years it's been? I mean, kids beat it down. It's really close to the capital of Mistral.
Seeing an ancient Grimm's lair like this, all the...
You'd think someone would have done something about it. Why does Jean yell,
"Go in a circle"?
Are they acknowledging that this clip of Ren supposedly running in a circle is actually just a series of jump cuts? Why does Jean get the hero moment by saving Ruby's uncle? Ruby hasn't done anything this volume, except let the bad guy get away and fail to read. Anyway, after Deus Ex Ren, we get a Deus Ex airship.
Oh, he's okay. Or is he? I don't know. They're out in the middle of nowhere. Oh, no, wait. They're going to be fine.
Scenes like this actively disincentivise us from getting invested in peril.
How can these fights mean anything if they don't mean anything? If nothing can come of them?
It's been impossible to care about action scenes since way back in Volume 1, but here we had a legitimate story-based threat to a character's well-being, and it gets resolved through convenience.
My stinger, I poisoned him. Crow!
If the characters aren't risking anything, then when they go into battle, if that battle is nerfed, it's not going to mean anything.
Like I said in Volume 1, the threats can only serve as audience manipulation.
The people following the story aren't going to be as engaged, but also it diminishes the potential sacrifice. It diminishes what the characters are risking.
This particular embarrassment isn't even trying to foreshadow something, because Tyrion's poison will never be a factor in the future. Unless, of course, losing his tail didn't actually mean anything.
I once saw a guy regrow his severed lizard tail. I swear.
In which case, I wouldn't even be surprised a little. And then, because it's literally impossible for boys and girls to be platonic friends, we get canon shipping. Or I guess you could call it Deus Sex, Ren and Nora. Oh, they share a room with Jean. That's gonna be awkward. But speaking of awkward, Blake, I mean, she gets hit on by this crusty old sea captain.
Traveling alone?
And it's instantly the best ship in the show. I mean, they're actually on a ship. How much clearer can it possibly be? I don't care which relationship you supported before, you have to acknowledge that this one's canon. 'Cause there's even a canon. It's legitimately perfect. Blake goes full Tsundere.
Who says I'm paranoid?
And Cap's like, oh, fine, I can play hard to get too.
No one, dear. No one. I'll leave you be.
And Blake looks back first. It's the most romantic thing in the show. The captain gives her the smoothest invitation to fuck I've ever heard.
Fair warning. These trips can be awfully boring.
And then Blake starts to take off her clothes. I mean, it's the most beautiful moment in the history of the cinema, and I will not tolerate anyone who still supports any other ship, especially not Blake and Sun. That's ridiculous, because his first appearance, he cheats on Blake by giving a dragon a mustache ride, which is a really awesome allusion to Shrek. But the kind of straightforward references to oral sex is sort of a running theme with Sun this volume.
That boy you brought home loves to run his mouth.
Uh-huh. But back to business. We can tell what this captain is doing here, right?
Now. No threat here.
He's trying to save the lives of all of his passengers by calming down the bucket of angst in the skin-tight pants. How in the world do they not put huntsmen on boats in case one of the passengers is slightly stressed during the trip? I mean, if someone can get startled by kids and attract a fucking monster, how does anyone ever survive a boat trip?
You really think I could get Neptune on the ocean?
See? Major props to the Cap over here for not only keeping his cool, but trying his best to calm Blake down.
No one. I'll leave you be.
You do realize that if she wasn't a huntress...
Huntsman! If you can clip its wings and draw it out towards the bow, we can take it!
They'd all be fucked.
I mean, you're the one with the swords.
How does this world justify its own existence when nobody takes the easiest steps to prevent its certain destruction? Now, I appreciate Blake ditching her bow a lot. Mostly because it's never been a functional disguise. And can we just consider that she didn't change her name either? That's pretty dumb on its own, but her family name is famous.
Her dad's the chieftain of Menagerie.
And, directly associated with the White Fang?
The White Fang's tactics are admittedly more aggressive since you stepped down as High Leader.
They covered the Faunus Rights Rebellion in school, right? What if somebody read ahead to the next lesson as Gira Belladonna? Hey, isn't that your last name too? Isn't that like if Obama was trying to hide from his Secretary of the Interior by dressing up in blackface, but still introducing himself as former President Barack Hussein Obama? It just wouldn't work. But now she's going to White Fang HQ and throws away the thing that she's been insisting was a disguise the whole time. Kind of dumb, but her ears are incredible.
I love the ear acting in this scene.
Our animators were so happy the second we said the bow's off. Nah, we don't need that bow.
You guys let the animators just go for it, and my God, it adds so much, and I love it.
And make up for any plot holes arising from such a silly decision.
I've been waiting about 6 months to ask this question. Why do the faunas that have animal ears also have human ears?
I feel like I was the only one in the world that didn't think that was weird.
No, there's two of us.
I mean, the fact that she has cat ears already is also weird, but we're drawing the line at 4 ears. The boring answer was because back in Volume 1, we were like, well, because then it would be really obvious that Blake's a faunus if she didn't have human ears.
People look weird without ears.
We're just like, fuck it.
Yeah.
We don't care, that's why.
And just a reminder, the fight scene animation errors have been cataloged elsewhere. See? Killing a Grimm leads to celebration. What did the world of Remnant have to say about that again?
Defending against a wave of Grimm, their survival is not guaranteed, as widespread panic will only lead to more attacks.
Just enjoy the rest of your trip and everything will be cool.
Yeah, because if you don't enjoy the rest of your trip, you'll attract another one, and Blake and Son don't have the energy to deal with that shit again. This conversation is... insipid?
They flew back to Mistral. I told them I'd catch up. Not the first time I left them to take a boat.
But you aren't taking a boat to the same destination. That's a big deal. You're the team leader. He got on a boat and he didn't know where it was going. But he perfectly assumed Blake's destination?
The moment you left, I knew exactly what you were doing.
Based on information that turned out to be wrong.
You're going on a one-woman rampage against the White Fang!
But still seems surprised when he turns out to have been right all along?
This is gonna be great! Never been to Menagerie before.
What? So he makes this top-tier journey to the East pun.
It'll be a regular journey to the East!
Even though the majority of the journey would be south.
I've never seen so many faunus in one place.
Except that you've seen significantly more faunus in one place in this scene. There are 360 faunus in this frame alone. And there are more like 200 on the entire path from the docks to Blake's house.
You fool!
And it's not even the most populated shot in the volume.
This is the scene that has the most extras or background.
Absolutely, yeah.
How many?
There's over 100.
And by the way, these people take a 10-second break in their conversation for, like, no reason.
I'm just saying.
They continue talking after Jacques gets distracted, and then they, like, continue to talk before Jacques rejoins the conversation.
I'm sorry, I tuned out for a second.
I know it seems a little tangential to bring up right here, but I couldn't slot it in earlier, so it's a little uncomfortable when you notice it. But back to the serious topic here.
Sure is crowded.
But it's very visibly not crowded. Plus, it's a dock with a shopping bazaar. This is a very appropriate amount of traffic for a reasonably populated area. Plus, it's a little amusing that the scene that was supposed to be the most visually cramped was usurped by a scene that takes place in Atlas.
The fun thing with Weiss and Blake has always been trying to make them similar but different.
With a bunch of people talking about how shitty the faunus have it. Now that's some top tier irony if you ask me.
Can you see it from here?
Kind of. It's that one.
Blake, that is not a kind of answer, you lying whore. Blake's mom is really hot. And that's almost enough to make you not notice that the rest of Blake's story is, like, really fucking bad, even by RWBY standards. So they cut to this scene where they're talking about how messed up it was that Vale got attacked.
We were horrified when we heard the news. The kingdom of Vale wasn't perfect, but it certainly didn't deserve what happened.
And they try to make Sun funny, but they mostly just end up making Callie seem all sexy and seductive.
I like him.
And, like, right in front of her husband to boot. He knows that they're only together on her behest because they both know she can do a lot better. Or maybe they're just straight up in an open relationship or something, because she's openly unsubtle about whatever's going on with them. She's like, hey, Blake, distract your father with this tea. I'm gonna go a cradle robin. And it's just wonderful. Anyways, in conclusion, Volume 4 is, oh, wait, hold on, the rest of Blake's story. Oh, right, almost,
I wrote a lot of a lot of Blake stuff, and this was, yeah.
So yeah, they get interrupted by some White Fang members.
The White Fang.
And Blake's like, White Fang members? I want to go somewhere near them. As if she didn't just fucking say.
I'm not going anywhere near the White Fang.
And Blake's dad is like,
they represent the White Fang here in Menagerie now.
And Sun says,
"Those psychos are here too?"
As if he didn't hear Callie saying,
"The White Fang,"
like a couple seconds ago. You know, the phrase that made them run out of the room. And then they're like,
"Your fanatics slaughtered people."
But they're surprised.
What is she talking about?
As if they weren't fucking talking about that mere minutes ago.
The Kingdom of Vale wasn't perfect, but it certainly didn't deserve what happened.
They go on to condemn Adam.
"We came to assure you that Brother Taurus and his followers do not represent the will of the White Fang."
Which is fine, but they follow it up with this.
"We were saddened when we heard of your departure from the White Fang."
As if they didn't remember who she was working for. If they wanted to stay on message, they should be happy that she got out when she did.
Who says I'm done fighting?
That's right, Blake. You tell him.
I told you. I'm not here to fight the White Fang. I'm not here to fight anyone.
Roll the fucking clip!
I'm not good at a
high like
lot
a
of
pill guy.
memory-related things. It's really, really bad.
Ah, that brings back some memories.
It just seems like your outfit doesn't cover very much.
It covers plenty.
A little more armor might help.
You know, a little more armor in the midsection, you know, specifically right there, in that exact spot, a little more armor might do a lot.
I don't need armor. I can look after myself.
But you can't. I mean, you can wait for your girlfriend to save you, losing an arm in the process, and then ditch her even though Adam specifically told you that he'd hunt her down and kill her.
The only thing I ever feared was that you would fall down the wrong path.
But I did.
For once, you're actually right, except now you backpedal.
One of the things that we established from the very beginning was that Blake really is the most mature and adult of all the characters, in my opinion.
Yeah, no.
Like, she has been through the most real-world struggle out of everybody.
Going through trauma doesn't automatically mean you're more mature. Maturity is really doing the best thing even if it won't be good for you.
Vale, Mountain Glen, Beacon. You confronted the White Fang time after time.
But Sun was telling Kelly about that stuff in the other room while this conversation was taking place.
I want to hear more about the adventures of Team RWBY.
If you wanted Gira to know that information, you didn't have to put the line that contradicts it in the script.
Why did you leave your friends behind?
Have Miles and Carrie seen the White Fang movie?
Come on, get out of here.
Do they know about Jack London? I mean, listen to this thing you made her say.
I hope they hate me for leaving.
Blake's been doing everything she can to kind of alienate her friends because she's worried for them. And that includes hurting the ones you love in the hopes that maybe they'll go away.
Are they purposefully doing this, or is it a coincidence?
God!
But in reality, Adam's trying to find Yang in order to hurt Blake.
I will make it my mission to destroy everything you love, starting with her.
So she left Yang in a way that will end up hurting her much more, and probably end up getting her killed? Maturity is also being a big enough person to ask for help when you need it. But if you can't make it that far, at least accepting help when it's offered.
I'm trying to help.
And certainly not chucking someone's phone. And thus we arrive at the chase scene, which is extremely poorly presented. And not because they missed an opportunity for a really great joke.
But somebody was making the joke that we should have put coconuts on the trees.
Why? You know, sometimes they just say things that make me just shut down. But on its face, someone is spying on the president of furries. Sure. And they chase her. That follows logically. But it's framed around phones in a really unclear way. Sun has important information on his phone, and Blake throws it, and it hits Ilya. But when they corner her, well, I say cornered, but she stops for no reason. She could easily keep going. But the point is, she pulls out her scroll between cuts and Blake kicks it out of her hand. And then...
Grab the scroll! Seems someone thinks it's important.
Which raises a bunch of questions. The first of which isn't actually a question. It's not clear whose scroll that is until later. If it's Sun, he'd already know why it was important.
I saw one at the market yesterday. I even got a picture.
But recent circumstances have made that picture irrelevant because, duh. And why would a White Fang member be wearing a mask in broad daylight when they wouldn't stand out otherwise? If it was Ilya's scroll, which it was, why would Sun assume she was taking it out to hold during the fight if it had sensitive data on it? Why didn't he assume that she was trying to call for backup? What was she doing anyway? She was sure able to take out Sun in one hit.
What? Huh? I really did kill that guy in one hit. This broken ass game.
Mostly because the writers forgot how they decided semblance worked in Volume 3. Hey guys, we're gonna base the entire goddamn climax of the show on the fact that using your semblance doesn't deplete your aura. Hey guys, we sort of need using your semblance to deplete your aura, otherwise Sun can't be completely fucking useless. Is that cool?
I don't like it when sequels break the rules of the world they set in the former film.
Great, Kay, thanks, bye. But why does Sun say...
Wait, you know her? But she doesn't even look like a faunus!
Wait, you know her, but she doesn't even look like a faunus.
That's racist.
Why does Blake have to only know people that look like Faunus? Blake grew up in the White Fang. Of fucking course she knows some of the members. Why isn't Ilya's sensitive information password protected? RWBY is simultaneously moving way too fast and way too slow, like a turtle falling out of a helicopter.
Working on a show that's probably going to last a long time is incredibly intimidating, but it's also fun being able to just leave little hints for things well in advance.
You can tell by some of the lines that don't make any sense at all. Like, do you remember Velvet's weapon?
You spent all semester building that up.
Do you even remember Velvet? Most of her existence was dedicated to dwelling on how little screen time she got.
Team Coffee's away mission lasted longer than expected.
This volume was supposed to have a bunch of short, episodic story beats in it.
We kind of wanted to do some like more episodic episodes, like an Adventure of the Week thing.
But it didn't.
No, we do not have time for that.
But the volume was primarily focused on an adventure that amounted to a lot of walking and nothing else happening.
Do you want to talk about how much walking and talking we had this season?
Yeah, that was what this whole season was going to be, basically, was them walking. We used to try to mocap that kind of stuff, but our volume isn't big enough to actually walk for that long. You can sometimes get a full cycle, but even then it's kind of pushing it. So we actually started doing this thing where we just do it in place, basically, and do the upper body, and then take walk cycles and then paste them together.
Just buy a treadmill, you fucking morons! You can get them for like $250. The fuck were we talking about? Oh yeah, Volume 4 only feels like an improvement because this is the first volume where characters actually act of their own volition.
We don't have time for safe.
So we get some sort of sense of the characters that's deeper than their design and accent.
They both have things in their past that are haunting them right now and influencing this decision, and Nora is able to find a way to kind of find a middle ground. It may have worked out better if they'd gone through or may not have, who knows, but just the fact that they were able to find a resolution, I think is cool. It's cool.
They're acted upon, they react. Does execution of the literal most basic tenet of storytelling, nouns do verbs because reasons, make this the best volume of RWBY from an objective viewpoint? Yes, it actually does. And what about subjectively, like my personal investment in seeing this series go on?
Our girls took a step forward during their time at Beacon, but then the fall of Beacon kind of resulted in this 2 steps back kind of thing for a lot of them.
Let's just say I'm not worried. Despite them having written competently for a few episodes, they outright say that their intention was to do the opposite of what they actually ended up doing.
It was interesting to see what happens when you take characters that have been growing for 3 years and then you knock them all back several steps.
Despite this being the first time any of the characters grew emotionally as a result of something that happened in the show, the writers think they've been going backwards.
But which way did she go? We'll never tell.
Right? She's going right. Yeah, I know it's a silly joke, but it's still something I can talk about. This whole volume about walking can't keep its directions straight. Everyone constantly bounces between moving stage right and stage left. To their credit, they never completely fucked up and made somebody walk backwards. But it's really bad to not at least have a consistent sense of forward flow and progress to a journey arc. But I really wouldn't have it any other way. Nothing I love about RWBY went anywhere. The fucky exposition and constant continuity errors are still in full swing, and I can't wait for every positive thing that I said to be completely invalidated within the first episode of Volume 5. I need to thank everyone on Patreon who supported me over the long process of making this video, and Cy Crescent for deconstructing all of the fight scenes so that I didn't have to. And oh shit, I didn't talk about Oscar at all. Shit, I'm sorry, I got nothing.